I took my last breath. I floated above my body. All the pain left. I felt wonderful. At the time, you gotta understand, was that I was an atheist. I had no idea what was going to happen. Boom, I went through the ceiling and I was floating in this darkness toward this light. And I didn't realize that this love that I felt was going to be judging me.
Hey everyone, welcome to God's Voice. Today I'm Vladimir Proknevsky, and today I have an absolutely mind-blowing story to share with you. I'm sitting down with Bryan Melvin, a man who went from being a militant atheist to having one of the most intense near-death experiences I've ever heard. His journey took him to the depth of hell and the heights of heaven. What he saw, what he heard, and what he learned will shake you to your core. But before we jump in, I want to tell you about Freebie Friday. Every week, I am giving away free digital resources to help you grow in your faith. It could be an ebook, video course, audiobook, maybe even something extra. But the free items change every week and are only available until next Friday. So go see what's free this week at godsvoiceday.com/free. And now let's get into this powerful near-death experience with my friend Bryan Melvin. Enjoy. Bryan, welcome to God's Voice today. So excited to have you. I love your powerful near-death experience. But before we get to all that, can you back it up for everyone watching and everyone listening and kind of paint a picture of what your life was like leading up to that experience?
I was younger back then. I was a young militant atheist at the time, and I worked as an electrician apprentice. I was working toward my, get your journeyman's license and all that. And I was young, and so I moved to Tucson, Arizona, and so this all happened in Tucson. And our construction, at the construction site that day, it was across the street, there was a sign. It was 121 degrees that day. It was 118 in Tucson that day, but where I was, 121 according to the bank marquee. And it was, so we did go to work early, and my supervisor was a Christian. We used to kind of ridicule him a lot. I kind of egged people on and kind of did it in the background, but that's beside the point. But anyway, he brought some water back from Mexico in one of the company coolers, and he had it stuffed in the back. And there's two coolers usually. So one was sitting on the tail of the truck, and it was empty. So I naturally thought and assumed that cooler that was stuffed in the back, where it shouldn't have been, I checked it, it was full of water, so I picked it up. Picked it up over my head. So one of those 5-gallon or 4-gallon coolers, and drank it real heavily, and I handed it to my friend, and he spat it out. And we opened up the top, and it was creek water from Mexico. And so it had algae. The algae was kind of reddish brown, didn't have any oxygen, and there are little bug things floating around in it, and it looked like a flat piece of spaghetti with eye on it, floating around, and everything was alive. And I drank a putrid mess. And so all said and done, I contracted cholera. I had some form of dysentery, and I had some type of neurotoxin. And I lost my records, so I just wrote it down, and I couldn't read my own handwriting, so I couldn't tell you the type of dysentery I had or the toxin. It's a big, long word that I just know I couldn't even pronounce. So I shouldn't be here. That's what happened. And immediately, if you ever had cholera, and I looked in a medical encyclopedia afterwards, and I had all the classic symptoms of cholera. And plus the other stuff is not pleasant either. And so basically in cholera, you hits you real fast, and we're usually dead within 7 days, because you lose body fluid, goes out both ends. I mean, it's just, but so I drank that so that we go home early in the day, because we get off around 4 noon or a little after noon because the heat's so hot. So I get off of work, and so I thought, with all my buddies, I rented a duplex with a couple other guys from Virginia that was with me. And so I thought I would just cure it with drinking Jack Daniels and Jose Cuervo and an old granddad and whatever liquor I could find and some beer and chase it down with. And it didn't work. I got worse. And so I woke up in the morning not feeling real good. and my stomach kind of hurt. So I went to work real early, and I had to finish trimming and finishing up a model home. And so I had my first attack in this model home. It just hit, and I kept it together, but I had to apologize. I kind of made a mess, but it comes out both ways, and you have a trash can. I won't get into the details of that, but anyway, I apologize for all that. And they sent me home because I didn't look too good. And so I went home, and oh man, then the pain hit, and I was in excruciating pain. It's like razor blades sloshing around in your stomach all the way down to your intestines. And I developed a high fever, and this is, we didn't have air conditioner at the duplex I rented from. We had a swamp cooler, and that, doesn't work too well. But I was freezing cold in the hot house. Our house the duplex would either be 94 to 98 degrees in the day, could be 100 and later in the day too. But that's the temperature. So I'm freezing cold in there. My friends, my roommates were saying, yeah, we got to take you to the hospital. I said, no, I'm not going. There's no way I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to be okay. This will pass. I'm just, the typical guy response. This will pass. And I've been sick before, and, I'm just going to tough it out. And they said, you don't look too good. And so I didn't know that on the third day, around the third or fourth day, or usually the third day in cholera, your body goes into shock. And when it goes into shock, third or fourth day, you actually feel great, you have no pain, and you walk around. And, if you read a study about people who had cholera epidemics, people getting up and walking around, falling down in some place and they just die. That's pretty much what happened to me. So if my friends had plans to go up to Phoenix, and they had a relative that had a plane that was going to fly everybody up to the Grand Canyon and see the Grand Canyon from the air and all that. And I thought that would be great, but I couldn't make it. I told them, you guys should go without me. They weren't going to go because I was so sick, but I got up. I felt great. That relapse phase, where I didn't know my body was going into shock. And so I got up, drank water, told them I felt great. And they went ahead on up to Phoenix. And so I just took a drink of water, and my German Shepherd, my dog, was with me. And as soon as I drank the water and saw him drive off, the pain hit me. So I collapsed on the tile in the kitchen, and I crawled back into the bathroom and managed to have another round of this stuff. And I know I passed out in there, probably died in the bathroom, but I remember waking up with my head against the door and my dog scratching on the other side. So I managed to open it. So that was early morning, and so I'm climbing back in the bed. It was about 11:30 a.m. Rough day around then, and pulled myself up on the bed. And I was weak. I was in excruciating pain. I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't tell my dog to go get help. She wasn't Lassie, and she was frantic. My dog was just frantic. I'd never seen my dog so frantic. And so I was trying to calm her down, but I was too sick to care at the time. And then I reached over to try to pet my dog and tell her okay. But my hand was over the bed like this, and my hand moved. Another hand came out of my hand and went through my dog's chin. It was my spiritual body. And I was an atheist. And then right at then, I took my last breath, and I'm nearsighted. My glasses are off, and my alarm clock's close to me. So this happened at 10 minutes till noon. And I took my last breath. I remember it. And I just left them. I floated above my body. All the pain left. I felt wonderful. And at the time, you gotta understand, was that I was an atheist, and I had no idea what any what do you call after death experiences. I had nothing to compare it with. I knew nothing of any of this stuff. I wouldn't have believed it at all. I mean, I was just a militant atheist, and you pick on Christians. That's what I used to do. And I used to get them in arguments and stuff. I wrote about it in my first book there, and some of the scenes I had debates with some folks. But anyway, I floated above my body and lost my atheism because I was more alive than I am now. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. It's like entering into the ultimate reality. I mean, I was more alive then when I died than I am now. And nobody can really understand that unless you have died and passed on and come back. I mean, it's just one of those things it's just remarkable how I had no pain. I felt great. I floated above my body. And then I saw what I looked like. I looked horrible, man. No wonder my roommates didn't believe me. I was pale as a sheet. I had blue blotches in me, and I was gaunt because I didn't have any fluid. I lost all my fluid. You can take my skin and pinch it, and it would just stay up, because that's what cholera does. When I was in the hospital, when I was revived, that's what the doctor was doing, pinching my skin, and it would stand up. And I thought, well, that's weird. But anyway, so I took my last breath, and I saw my dog whimpering, and she was spinning around, going around in circles and whimpering, and then she settled down. And then I faced the ceiling, and I saw a fingerprint inside of a fold of a texture in the ceiling. And I thought, why am I facing this? And then I could hear everything perfectly. I could hear my neighbors, a young couple that always fought constantly, husband and wife constantly fighting. And then I heard some kids kicking a can down the road. So boom, I went through the ceiling, went up through went over above the roof, flew out near the swamp cooler. Swamp cooler was a little bit away from me. And I noticed when I went by it, it had a baling wire and bandana tied around the access port to change the filter. And after this was all over, I had to go up and change the filter. And it's exactly what I saw. I never, you can't see this thing from ground level. I had no idea. So I had several confirmations that this actually happened. And so I flew above that, and all of a sudden I was in this beautiful, I call it a peaceful darkness, because I wasn't in any at all in any pain. I had no pain whatsoever, and the pain just disappeared, and I felt really good. And I was floating in this darkness toward this light. And I had no idea what was going to happen. And I wasn't an atheist anymore. And I thought, well, I guess maybe I'm going to heaven. I had no idea, because I heard this beautiful music, and it was a different language, but I understood the words, and they were all singing praises about God, his character traits, who he is, how great he is, and things about God that would astound you. It's almost like, as I tell people, it's like the mystery of the universe is displayed in a dramatic way. Everything that you ever thought was answered. And then I was floating through there, and I could hear a voice speaking to me on the inside, and it was very quiet. And all of a sudden I would have life reviews, and I could see how it was almost like how the Lord blessed me with good parents, Christian home, all that, then showed me a progression of how I rejected that and how I treated other people. And then I felt great. I didn't know what was happening. I knew I died, and I thought, well, what's happening? So I got closer and closer to the light. I didn't realize that this love that I felt coming from this light that was coming from, actually when I saw where it was coming from a rock, with somebody standing on a rock, and this black void of space. And that light was coming from him, and I got closer. And the love that I felt, I didn't realize it was going to be judging me. And that was the thing, is that love was judging me. And that sounds strange, but to people, they think, oh, God, love's going to judge you, and you're all going to be accepted, and everybody's going to like you, and everything's going to be wonderful. No, it was what he exposed to me is not only how many times he saved my life, like from car wrecks and dangerous encounters of almost being shot, getting in fights, to a lot of car wrecks he spared me from. I never acknowledged him. And then he showed me how I treated people. And so basically I was facing a reckoning, and God's love judged me and showed me how I treated people. And I wasn't very loving. I wrote in my book, I just simply made life ugly. And I thought I was making it good to people, but I was making it very ugly toward people. And so I mistreated people. I betrayed people. I lied about them. I used them. All these things, all justified. And it was like, this is how I would treat God's love if I was allowed into heaven. It was almost like there's no salvation in the afterlife. And I had to come back to life to get saved. And so that's pretty much what happened to me. And so but when I was there at the time, standing and floating down, I landed feet first in front of the Lord. It was Jesus, and he had a hood over his face. He had a gold sash around his waist. I can't describe the colors that emanated from him. And he spoke by means of thought. And it was like encyclopedia of stuff hitting you at once. And I fell down. I felt like, I fell face first down, and something picked me up. I stood in front of him, and he began speaking. And then I realized that if I was shown grace and was allowed into heaven in my fallen state, I would corrupt it. I would misuse love just like I misuse it now. And people misuse love. They betray, they abandon, they plot, scheme against people. They tell falsehoods. They bear false witness. I saw all that about myself, and there's nothing I could do about it. And then I was being judged by the Lord. I was being judged thoroughly. And it's a fearful thing to fall in that type of judgment, because I couldn't have any excuses. I was expert at making excuses and getting out of jams, being questioned by the police and getting out of jams and all that stuff when I was growing up and running around in the world. And there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I could say. I couldn't say, Lord, a crazy sign fell on my head, hit me. And that's why I act like the way I do. I had a bad family or a good family. I couldn't pull any card. I couldn't pull any card. And I couldn't pull a victim card on them. And it was like you see yourself and what you're really like on the inside revealed by how you treat people, and and if he allowed you into heaven, you would not behold his righteousness. In fact, you would not behold his goodness. You'd use his goodness in a manner in which you would pit his good character traits against each other just to get what you want. In fact, that's what I was doing in life. I didn't know it at the time. And I thought God is good. And all this stuff that you learn going up in that void, and from the music that you learn, how good God is. I misused it all, just like everybody else misuses it. And I was judged for that. And I saw my sin nature. This was horrible. I was frightened. The next thing I knew, he spoke to me, and I looked down. I was wearing a filthy judo suit, looked like, I don't know how you describe it. It was a robe, was filthy, moth, eaten, kind of yellow and green and black and dingy. And it was filthy rags, is all I got to say. And he looked at me, and he began speaking to me. And I wrote this down after it happened, and I tried to convey it in my book best I could and can. And so he spoke to me, and he said, you will see a land unknown that's best forgotten, but not to be left unseen. When you arrive and you feel a sense of overwhelming, say my name and my title. In other words, he gave me permission to say his name and his title. I was totally flummoxed. I had no idea what was actually going on. And I was, you're stupefied. You're just standing there. Yeah, whatever, say. I know you can't talk. All you're doing is drinking it in. And then he said, an option for your return is yet to be decided. And that really hit me. It was like, I know what it meant afterwards. I had no idea where I was going through or what's going to happen. So I got picked up and went through a door opened in the wall of this place in the darkness there. And it rolled like a scroll, and I went through it, and I was in another tunnel. I was in a tunnel in a vortex. It was hot. The heat could melt your eyes out, and that's how hot it was. And you could hear all these sounds, cursing sounds, hideous languages, cussing and screaming and yelling and all this stuff. And it was hot. And it was like being inside of a tornado. It was a yellowish green spinning thing, and I was going in it. And I was thinking, if I was resuscitated too soon, like if I was going through that first part of the darkness and feeling the great love of God, my testimony would have probably made Oprah free or something. And I tell everybody, go to the light, whatever, and it's all love and all that. But no, I actually went beyond that. I was actually face the judgment that it says in the Bible. Once you die, you face judgment. And I have no idea, I have an idea now why I came back, but he allowed me to come back. But at the time, I just didn't know what to think. I didn't know what was going on. And so I to go to that vortex, and then I saw another light, a yellow light. Now, if I died, I'd probably tell people, oh, you go through a tunnel. Not everything that people talk about. And this is one of the reasons why I had my experience. I didn't know it at the time. Is to help people understand that if it sounds too good to be true, then it is, because most people only talk about good NEDs. Talk about NEDs as seeing heaven, seeing loved ones, greeting them, all this stuff. And I'll explain what that's like in a second here. And everybody thinks everybody's going to make heaven, or you deserve it because you're basically a victim, or you have wrong ideas about God. God is love, so you'll never punish me. And I can't buy that. A living God would have hell, so I can live my life, anything I want to do, and he'll accept me. So you are actually pitting God's love against his love in order to do what you want to do. And all he wants you to do is accept him and have a life-altering change so he can save you. But no, you reject it with your excuses. It's just unmitigated pride. I had that pride. And that was kicked out of me during my experience. God didn't know me nothing. And I was taking advantage of his love, grace, mercy by how I lived my life and treated others. And I didn't think there was going to be any recompense by it at all. And so I was facing severe recompense. And for stealing money, things I did, drugs. I stole drugs out of a medicine cabinet and sold them to all the youth at a Southern Baptist. The youth, they go, what do you call it? Youth group. Yeah, youth group that went roller skating. And so my drugs got everybody blasted. But I was a corrupter of youth. So anyway, and so I'm sitting there and I'm stood and I saw that yellow light and I flew through it and I fell through the sky, landed real fast on the ground and bounced several times. It didn't hurt. If you would fall and hit that hard and realize your back would be shattered, you would be out of breath and you'd be not here. I just bounced and I stood up and I didn't know where I was because I thought, well, this is hell. There's going to be pitchforks, devils, and flames. And it wasn't. It was a dilapidated house on a hill in a valley, and it rolled down this hill. And I was standing on another hill on the other side, and there's a valley between us, a real sharp, steep hill. And I'm looking at this thing, and all of a sudden, all these people ran out of the house down the hill, and more of them came up. And they came up and said, "Bryan, welcome to paradise." And one of the things they said is, "Don't you feel the love here?" Well, the love I felt there was not the type of love that I stood before Jesus. It's not the same type of love that I came through the void feeling. This was a sickly, sweet, deceptive, I call it a devil speak love. It's real seductive. It's icky. It just makes you sick when I think about it. And then I'm going, and I'm saying, okay, what's going on here? And all these people are slapping me on the back, welcome me to paradise. This is, you got eternity here, welcome, and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, this one guy came up to me. You got to understand, this guy was not any good. And unfortunately, I had a party at my parents' house. When my parents were away, they went to, they had some type of thing. They worked for the National Park Service, so they had some type of convention or something going on at Disney World in Florida. So they went down there. So during that time, I had a big party at my house. And so this one guy that came there, he had a bad attitude. And so he left the party with a friend of mine, and they went up about a half-mile walk or so up to the shopping center. He mouthed off to people. And my other friend ran and escaped, but when he mouthed off to people, the car turned around and blew his guts out with a shotgun. So he was killed. And then when he came, when this person looked like he looked like that person talking to me, welcoming me to paradise, I said, "You can't be in paradise." And then he went behind these other people and started to change. And all of a sudden I looked at their eyes. Their eyes were like alligator eyes. They had yellow glint to them, yellow reptilian type eyes. And all of a sudden I started feeling a sense of overwhelming. Then all of a sudden I saw what these things really were. They weren't people. These were creatures, familiar spirits, whatever you want to call them, that were giving the illusion of people, tricking me. The deception is so incredible there that it's hard to convey that to people, because all of a sudden this lizard-like creature came up to me, and I call him lizard breath. It's a term, my term for him. It's not a cute name. It's sort of it's the only way I could handle what I saw and what I would be soon seeing. And I just nicknamed him that because his breath was so foul that it's called lizard breath, and would distort his face. And he was hissing and spitting, and he motioned to me. He said, and all of a sudden, all I could say at that time, when he felt that overwhelming, I said, "Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ," because the Lord gave me permission to say his name. So I had permission to say his name in this place, because he told me to say his name in this title, Jesus Christ. And they couldn't grab me or touch me, but this lizard creature said, "Oh, it's been granted to thee to see. Come follow me. I offer you half the kingdom." Using this guttural voice. It was hard to explain, and what it was really like, terrifying. He walked over and stuck his hand like in the horizon or in the sky, ripped it open, and he stepped up out of it. I still remember this as like it happened just a few hours ago, and it's just stuck in my mind. And I stepped up out of it, I looked back, and I came out of a cell, a cube, and everything that happened to me is found in the scripture. Scripture talks about in Proverbs, I can't remember the chapter, but it talks about the chambers of death. And if you look at the Hebrew meanings of the words that are used in Ezekiel chapter 32 about hell being round about as a pit, and there are cells embedded in the walls of the pit, is exactly what I saw. And Bill Weiss mentioned these things. The cells are about 14 by 14 feet square. And he's pretty correct in that. I didn't want to. I thought of putting like 15 by 15 feet square, but so in my book, I wrote 10 by 10 because 10 is 3 letters and 15 was the that's a little liberty. That's a little lazy there, I guess, but they're cubes, squares. And so I came out of it, but I looked inside, it looked huge. And it was like, whatever is in your mind, however you died, provided the image in there would be very similar to Star Trek The Next Generation's holodeck. And this is 1980, before Star Trek The Next Generation ever came out, about the holodeck. And that'd be a good indication of what it's like. And it could be a small area, but when you're inside of it, it looked big. And so I saw the cells, and the cells are stacked 6 high. On next to me was another cell, and the cell on top. And people were inside of them. And they were living in their own time periods at which they died. And so this creature told me to come follow him. So we walked out on what looked like a wide, dusty road. And it was hot. And you could hear a crackle of flames. You can see some rocks that looked like semi-molten, but it was so hot. And I was walking, and I call it a dusty mire. And when you're walking on it, all these little wormy things would come out with teeth and yell blasphemies and obscenities to you, calling you all kinds of names. And these little white moths with teeth that fly and flutter about, yelling and screaming blasphemies and stuff. And so this lizard breath creature came, and he was walking, and we came to, this was a pit, and so we came to the edge of the pit, and I see these tornado vortexes coming and dropping people off down the center of this thing. And I also saw other people being escorted into cubes by these demonic creatures. And what was amazing was this is described in Ezekiel chapter 32 as the pit, the bottomless pit. As far as I looked up, I couldn't see the beginning, I couldn't see the end. And there were levels, and a wide, dusty road. And I just remember looking it up. I just remember seeing all this stuff happening, how the entities were flying to different levels with these bat-like wings and hideous-looking creatures and shapes. Some of them look cute. And people always ask me, what do they look like? Well, most of them look like, remind me of ancient pagan deities, like the Pazuzus of Mesopotamia, but in living form and a lot more scarier than a statue. And some of them were very, look like ancient things you see later that I came across studying ancient history and stuff and religions and stuff. And this is what some of those things look like. And others look like semi-human. Some of them look cute. They were all various shapes and sizes. The taller ones had authority over the smaller ones and all that. And they're very deceptive. And so this lizard creature is very happy about this place. He's showing me how people come in and stuff. And all I could say was, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. I was scared spitless. You gotta understand, I was scared. I couldn't wake up. I wanted to wake up. All I could say was, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. I said it nonstop until I left that place. And so we walked back to across the way, past some people. Some of these people would walk by you, and for some reason, I can't explain this. They're so hard to explain what it's like when you die and live in eternity, an eternal realm where there is no time, but there's an eternal time. I can't describe it. And past, present, future, whatever, and all in one. But you're walking by these people, you were granted, I could see what they could see. This sounds really weird. But as I was walking by, and some of them thought they were in paradise. Others saw exactly where they were going. Others, the people were coming through that vortex, dropping down into the pit through those tornado-like vortexes. Lots of them. And the place smelled horrible, and it really stunk. And the stench was so bad you could taste it. It permeated everything. And so it's horrible. Death, decay, sulfur, but not so much the sulfur egg smell, but even worse with all the dead decay and stuff. And it was a stench you just can't believe. And these creatures down there hated human beings with a passion, and they loved deceiving them and bringing them to this place. And that's what I was seeing. And so we walked back to the cells, and they were stacked 6 high. Then up above would be a road, but that would be the level above. And it's just pretty much how the Bible describes it. And most scholars, Jesus said, these 2 cities, there'll be stricter judgment than Sodom and Gomorrah for you. And so there's levels and degrees of recompense. So the people above me were not receiving the recompense as intense as I was, or the people below me in the lower levels were experienced, which I would soon find out. And so as I was walking back there, this creature kept saying, come follow me, I'll offer you half my kingdom. Curse God, curse me. Why would God allow these people or this place be? And when I wrote my book, I actually wrote the language it was saying. There was a lot of cuss words. So the editor is saying, Bryan, this is a Christian book. Take out the cuss words. Okay, I took them out. So I made it. I tried to capture the deception through how they rhyme. Their speech would rhyme in a way. And it was very deceptive. It was I call it the way they were trying to lead the witness. Come follow me. I offer you half the kingdom. Sounds great. But that's not what they meant. There was like a dagger behind it. And you'll find out at the end of what that meant. Well, we walked back to the cells, and I noticed at a certain time the cells would click and they would move over. We're going to the right, going down the spiral at intervals. I can't describe it. And sometimes I know there's no time there, but I would see like a clock on the wall inside of a cell where people were living in the time period that they lived. And they were, and it was like at a certain time, the cell would click over and their torments would increase. And it was like recompense. What was happening to the people there, it's mentioned in Job, I think it's 25, I think. It says the dead twirl in hell with the Raphaim, with the fallen spirits. They're travailing, wailing. Abaddon has no covering. Hell has no covering. The place of destruction has no covering. In other words, your real sin nature is being exposed there. You're not being redeemed. You're not in a purgatory. Your true sin nature, what you're really like, is being exposed there, and you become that. And the creatures inside these cells were making people that way. They're helping them and tormenting them at the same time. And God doesn't torment people. He doesn't torture people. People do it themselves. They do it in this life. They do drugs, alcohol. They really live in tormenting lives. And there it's intense. So the real nature of people I saw. And that's another horrible thing that sometimes I want to erase out of my head, but I can't, is how human nature, no matter how good you think you are, inside, everybody's capable of goodness, of doing good. And that's, depending on your, excuse me, I don't want to sneeze there, but, you're capable of doing good, but you can't maintain the good. Only one that can maintain good is God. But, you fail every single time because things come in your life. You'll betray people. You will abandon them. You'll neglect them. Something will happen in your life that causes a snowball effect. And so all that's revealed to you, and all those people were having that revealed to them, their sin nature was being uncovered. So I saw all kinds of people there. I'll just give you a few illustrations and then move on real quickly. So I walked in, I could walk by these cells and I could look inside them. Sometimes we'd stop and look inside the cells, and it was granted me to know the life history of the person. All I could say was Jesus, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Some people instantly entered into like flames of torment. Others entered into a place what they thought was like one person came in and they were in a dungeon, and they're just sitting on a bed, and that's all they were doing. And this was a long, long time ago. And I don't know, you're just sitting there and he was just, I guess his own worst fear of being in this prison was really tormenting him. And it symbolizes how he put people in prison in his mind. He wasn't a nice person. And he could fool some people, but he couldn't fool God. And so he was there, and that's all it was. And I moved on, and I knew the cells would change. And when the cells would move slowly, the scenes would change inside for the people. And everything was designed to uncover the real nature of the person. So I came through several of these, and I remember ancient people in ancient times, like this woman outside of Corinth, and I didn't know at the time Corinth and anything about Corinth. I didn't know there was a temple up there for Diana or Artemis, whatever you want to call that same entity. But this was one of these prostitutes up there. And so all of a sudden, she looked like creatures were having their way with her. She hated it. And then she would give birth to these kids. And it's hard to describe what you're seeing, because these weren't kids. These weren't people. These were demonic beings. And what she did in life was illegal at that time, in that time period, but it was a practice still. It was under the table. It was a form of child sacrifice that you give your firstborn over to get prospered. And so they go to the temple prostitutes. They would have the firstborn, and they get rid of them. And I won't describe how. Some of them were put in flames of fire. Others were dismembered by certain rituals. And so you could see this happening, and I didn't understand it. And I know that there weren't infants there. There were no kids there at all. But these things were tormenting her because she was seeing and experiencing all the pain that she inflicted upon these kids that she gave birth to. She was experiencing it. And then they started pouring hot liquid down her throat. And she wasn't getting better. She was getting worse. It's so hard to describe that. And then you're not being reformed. You're becoming what the devils want you to become. A total reprobate, and you're being tormented by it day and night. It's a horrible thing to be, but all I can tell people is that God he prepared the hell for the devil and his angels, but when man fell, we became, we're the devil's cannon fodder. And so we earn our place in hell. And that's something that people need to think about. And how we treat other people, how we do that, how we go about our lives reveals things. None of us are perfect, and we reveal all our shortcomings. You might think you're a good person, but deep down inside, you're not. But anyway, all that's being revealed. So I'd walk to another place. I'd see a person walking and taking a hike in the mountains, and it was like Germany in the early 30s or something, and Hitler Youth guy or whatever. He walked by the stream, and there's no water in hell, but he would try to get a drink, and it would just come up sand. I saw this many, many times. There's no water in hell. But he thought he was in paradise, but he could never reach his destination, and he was constantly facing thirst, but he could never be satisfied. And that's what he was doing. He died back then, before the World War II ever started. And so he's still there today. I don't know what a cell looks like now. I know it probably changed, but reflect on things that you did in life too. And I saw another woman who treated people real bad. She toyed with people's lives like a cat, played with a mouse. She had these mind games and tormented her. I saw so many people. And so one of the people that I wrote in my book, A Land Unknown, Hell's Dominion, I wrote in a chapter, and the Lord really wanted me to write this, and it was deer pudding. And when I wrote it, I had no idea why. I just had to write the book. I tried to write it after I had the experience, but I couldn't convey what happened. I actually made a 50-page manuscript and had my cousin type it up, but it was so narrative. It had no details, and I didn't know how to describe the details. So later, I used that as the template for the book, and all my old notes that I took afterwards of what some of these things said and what Jesus said and all that, so I wouldn't forget it. So when I came to this place, I saw this tornado vortex with a woman in it come in and dropped her off in front of a cell. We were walking toward it, and then we got close to her. She couldn't see us. That's just how it is. Well, for some reason, I knew that what she saw was like paradise. She looked like to her she was in heaven, but the reality of it was she wasn't. She was on this wide, dusty road. She wasn't in heaven, and all these creatures were standing around and laughing and projecting thoughts and images into her mind of paradise. And so the door opened, so she steps inside the cube, and she thought that she saw her grandmother, and her dead relatives were greeting her there, saying, "Oh, dear pudding." Nobody. She's an American. She died in a car wreck, and I don't mean to anyone else who is called dear pudding is probably not your mom, okay, or this is a particular person, and so it just says dear pudding, and that's why. Don't you feel the love here, dear pudding? Here's Uncle Bob, here's Joe, and they're all welcoming her. She thought she was in her grandparents' farmhouse where she had probably the only real happiness in her life, because how she grew up. And she, "Oh, yes, well, I feel the love here. This is wonderful." And it says, "Oh, dear pudding, you have all eternity here. Let me show you around and show you around eternity." And so they walked back and they went back to the kitchen, through a little farm door out the back, down some stairs. There's a clothesline back there. And her grandmother's, it wasn't her grandmother. I could see these. I saw what she saw. At the same time, I could see them as what they were. They're giving the illusion of people she knew. Some of these creatures were chained to the bottom of the cell, but as she walked, it was like the floor of the cell would move and the scenery would change in her mind. She couldn't see the other things that are around her, because every demon, everything was a demon. Every item there and shape was an illusion of places she'd been. And so here she walks outside, sees all this stuff, and her grandmother says, Dear Pudding, you have all eternity here. Don't you feel the love here? He goes, yes, it just feels so wonderful. This is paradise? I go, yes, this is paradise. Let me go inside and bake your favorite cookies for you. And so she had this evil grandmother look, so I could say. And she was wringing her hands, and I could see the creature really doing that. So she walked over to what her thought was her favorite spot, but she couldn't figure it out because her favorite spot was miles away. Why was it right there? Then she would get apprehensive. So she sat on a rock, which was a creature of two trees, and she thought she was by a stream, and she reached her hand in water and pulled out sand again. Just fell through her fingers. Right as she did that, the two trees became what they were, and she could see them as these entities with tentacles, and they grabbed her, and the stone reached up and grabbed her too. This was horrible, and she shrieked and screamed, and we walked on. But I had an insight when I looked into this. I have no idea how this happened. I knew their life history in an instant, and so when I was looking at her, I knew her, everything about her. Everybody would like this woman because she was a PTA member, Parent Teachers Association. She did a lot of community events. She was involved in this and stuff. And she was very upper class people. But then I could see how she treated her kids. And her kids would want to be like a fireman or an astronaut or something. It's like kids always want to do, or their daughters want to play with dolls and be homemakers. Says, you will be that. We only have doctors, dentists, and lawyers in this family. Well, she would beat them with a hairbrush until they comply and go through the schools, the bigger named universities. And that's what she did. She really, you would call her a Jezebel. She was, on the outside, she was nice to everybody but her family. Well, she really made her family follow suit what she wanted them to be, because we only have doctors and lawyers and dentists in our house. And the kids didn't really want that, so here they are, and growing up in that environment, they have no choice. And she was really mean on the inside, and she'd play games with people too. And so basically she was playing games with people. By being nice, she was fooling them in order to get things from them. Typical narcissistic behavior. And she didn't, when also saw her damaged heart, that in life, she didn't have any control over her life. And so she brought that out to everybody else. So she wanted to control everything. And it was all brought out when the trees, those creatures grabbed her and she shrieked. All that came out. Her whole sin nature came out. She saw herself that she was not in paradise. Now, she was resuscitated before this event. She would come back to life in this world and tell people that just go to the light. You have paradise. The love is so intense there. And you meet all your relatives. How many people have heard testimonies like that? And they're a dime a dozen. But the people never have gone further. The Lord allowed me to go further into it. I would have done the same thing if I just was floating through the darkness, feeling the love. And if I was resuscitated, came back, because medical means resuscitate you these days, and then I'd have the same thing. My testimony would be different. So that's why I had this, to warn people that if it sounds too good to be true, then it is. And there is recompense. And people know it deep down inside. They're not all that in a bag of chips. I mean, you're really deep down inside, the real you. And no matter how you try to cover it up, you could be the nicest person in the world, but there's still something inside of you that messes up. It'll help it. The Lord understands that. He came to redeem us from that and save us from that. And just don't reject it. And so people are always searching for love in all the wrong places, so to speak. And it always reminds me of that song, we're searching for love in all the wrong places. And it's all, that's what people do. And down there, they find out that that love that they feel is not what it's cracked up to be. It's very deceptive. It's a love designed to trick people to come down to this place and to fool people that there is no hell. It's all heaven and all that. And that's pretty much what I saw. And so we walked along. I saw all these people in there. I saw, we went further down the levels, and there's a place where I wrote in my book where I saw look like poles extending outside and reminding me of telephone poles going up out of the walls of hell, and I could see out of it, and I could see on top of it over geographic locations over the earth, these big, tall creatures up there, demon-type creatures, rocking back and forth, singing dirges and humming and songs. And it kind of sounds strange. What do they do? Years later, a few years later, when I went to church and all that, I went to church and they were teaching spiritual warfare and read Ephesians chapter 6 there, 10 through 18. And it talked about in chapter 6, verse 12, where we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, host of wickedness in heavenly places. I was seeing the principalities and the rulers of darkness on these poles over geographic locations, and they would create an ambiance that people would fall into. Like this place does exist. It's over in Japan. Mount Fuji, they have a place where people go and they commit suicide. And so I had no idea any of this was before this, but during World War II, they had a song the Japanese soldiers would sing, "Death is light as a feather." So this entity was singing something similar to that. Death is light as a feather. Take one, take two, times three. Now come, kill yourself, die. And so it was like like an area where it would attract people to go commit suicide. And that actually does exist. It's on Mount Fuji outside of Tokyo. It does exist. And so I had no knowledge of any of that. So that's like I was saying, it was like these creatures were up above and they would call up creatures to help them of like minds. And then go up to the poles and go out into the areas and capture a soul and bring them back down. I saw another one that was like a snake, was a horse-headed, snake-like creature with a little teeny like scales, but the scales were the same thing. And it would fly up and crawl up there. I remember snapping its head at me, and then it would go up and escape, and it would go all throughout the land and drop off stuff in people's heart. It was perversion, pornography, perversion, sex offender type stuff, sex offenses, crimes. And years later, after I came back and I'm a Christian and all that, I actually managed treatment teams for sex offenders, and that it was like these things would go into a heart of a person, eat out their conscience and their emotions and their feelings, so they can do some gross things to people. I won't get into that right now. So I saw people like that there. They were getting their justice done to them. But I will spare you the details. And I don't want your channel taken off. Yes. But anyway, things I saw there are so horrible that, and I didn't put a lot of it in the book, and some of it was taken out because it was too horrible, of how these people tear people apart, how they chew on them, and how much hate they have towards human beings is beyond belief, and how deceptive they are, how they trick people to come to this place. And it's almost like, wow, I thank Jesus for coming and saving us. Wow, what great love he has. It just blows my mind, because that's the redemption he paid, so we don't have to go there. And the people would come there and they'd be ripped apart by these creatures. Others, they would just depending on what, it was like your own worst nightmare. So I'll kind of get close to the end there, and I'll talk about heaven in a minute too. But right now, just one last scene that I talk about. So we were down lower levels, and so we would go between the cubes and go, and the cubes would rub against you. I could look inside of people, and I could see people there. And I remember one person that I saw, he was hunched over, and a slight hunchback, big wild hair. He was in a prison cell, and he was just writing. He was feverishly writing. It was just pure evil that he was writing, and he was a horrible person. And later, when I went to college and stuff, and I saw a picture of what this guy's hair looked like, I go, that looks like Antonio Garmucci. He's who was a contemporary of Vladimir Lenin. He was in Italy. He was an Italian Marxist who inspired most of Lenin and what is known as critical Marxism or critical Marxism or critical theory. Some of his writings are that he wrote something like 3,000 pages. I found all this out when I went to college, but it kind of reminded me of him. And in fact, I'm pretty much sure that was him. And so we walked on, and we came to another place where I saw this person. This was a practicing wit. There's all kinds of Wiccans out there. There's witty Wiccans who think they're doing good, and you have real dark ones. This was a real dark, evil person who knew how to do things. So if people read Ezekiel chapter 13, verses 17 through 23, try to do it in the New King James Version. King James Version, you have to really do a word study, but read out of the Amplified Classic Version, and you'll get an idea of what's happening. There are these types of people who practice the dark arts, and there's a phrase in there that they will kill people before their time. Make people die before their time. It's a spiritual warfare scripture teaching how to fight against really dark occult stuff that these type of people do. The black arts, the orgies they indulge in, and I won't get into all the details. So this person was that person. She was a witch, and she was inside of a coffin, scratching to get out. The lid would kind of go back and forth, and the entities that were chained to her floor were mocking her. She couldn't escape. And you listen to and there, and she couldn't get out of the coffin. Why? Because she killed people before their time, just like Ezekiel chapter 13 says. And she would put people in, they call them pillow prophets. Actually, you put people in your pocket to control them. You put veils over the mind of people so they get disheartened and feel like there's no hope. And it's usually they attack Christians or anybody in order to do this. For whatever reasons they do it, as they were lied to that they would get half the kingdom of hell they can help rule over. I don't know. But so I saw her scratching to get out. And then we walked on, and then this is hard to explain. My cell entered several levels above, and I was a lot farther below where my cell was now. I saw another cell. We went in the back recesses of the pit, and there was a cell there, and that was my cell. And it was like, how can you describe eternal time to linear people who only know linear time? It was like I was allowed to see in the future where my cell would end up on this particular level. And it was because when I was younger, at that time, I was involved in mind science. I didn't get into the wacky stuff. I didn't read the literature. I just thought the idea of being able to use the power of thought to get what you want would be, and I practiced that. And I learned it. And there's a cost of sleep paralysis. So it's the occult world. I didn't even know I was dabbling in the occult because I didn't believe in any of that stuff. I was an atheist. I thought you had the power of your mind. And so that's what I studied. Then Star Wars came out. That basis is about the power of the mind and that too. But that's Hollywood version. But anyway, here I was, and I realized that preacher said, I offer you half the kingdom. Come follow me. Curse God, curse yourself, curse this, curse that. Come follow me. And I realized this cell would be where would eventually be in this particular spot, but I was going to be receiving half the host of hell to come inside my cube and torment me at will. That's the reality of it. You talk about a wake-up call. I kind of joke about it, but it more of because it's the horror of it. It's hard to take. And all I could say was Jesus Christ. And I was weakening at that time. I was, you don't breathe in hell. But air comes out of you to facilitate speech. But I was weakening, And so I was standing there looking at all these creatures inside the cell, waiting for me to enter it. And I didn't want to go. I was standing still, but something was propelling me in toward it. And they were all chomping at the bit for me to come in there. It looked like a dentist chair, but the dentist chair wasn't a dentist chair. It was actually a creature. I could see that. But give me the illusion of a chair, wants me to sit on this thing. And they were just going to have their way. And so I was just like being propelled toward there, and I didn't want to go into it. And I've never felt alone, banished away from all love and hope. There's absolutely none there. You're totally banished away from things in this life where you have some hope, you have some love, you can feel some things. There's none of that. There's just total darkness, is the way I put it. Not the darkness like dark outside, but this dingy gloom of no hope, absolute despair. And I knew I deserved this place. It's been proved to me when I was judged. This was where I was going to reside. And here I was actually seeing where my cell would be in the future. And the Lord allowed me to see that. And so these creatures in there trying to get me in there, old lizard breath was trying to get me in there. And totally without hope. And things in your goes through your mind while you're saying Jesus Christ, and the things, it takes a long time to write and talk about it than it does to how it actually happened, because I was terrified too at the time. And it's almost like I wanted to, I knew my parents would have a funeral for me. I wanted to tell the preacher, I'm not a good old boy. I'm not in heaven, Mom. I didn't want, I couldn't tell my mom or my parents, family, anybody. I'm not in a nice place. And I wanted to, but then that's to subside it. And then you just feel totally alone because you realize there's nobody coming for you. This is it. And so I felt this presence coming up behind me, and I thought it was Satan. That's what I thought at first. I thought he's going to throw me in with a pitchfork into the cell, and that's it. And these creatures are going to have that at me. And so I never felt so forlorn, banished away from all love. No, absolutely no hope at all. It's a horrible feeling. Some people, they feel like they have no hope. I understand that because my wife passed away recently in August 23rd on 2024. And I understand grief better than I have before. But there's always hope. And in this life, you may not think so, but there is hope. There's hope in Jesus. But there in hell, there is none. You have none. You reap what you've sown in life. And basically, you earn your place there. And it's all revealed to you when you're judged, what you're really like. And there's no turning away from that. And you're sealed in that dilemma. And this is your fate. Either, you'll go in an instant into the cell or cube, or you'll stand for God in judgment. There's different ways he sends people there. I don't have time to go through all that. And so I'm just there, and I felt totally hopeless. I was being dragged into this place. I could feel the mire, this dusty mire going over my feet. Could see the worry things and all that. And I'm scared. There's nothing I could do. And the presence coming up behind me was stepping in. You can see it was like boom, 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 rocking back and forth. Each step was like, if you ever had M80s and you played with them as a kid, and the explosion would rock the ground. That's what it reminded me of. Is boom, boom. Whoever it was had great power and authority, and the creatures did not like this person. They left. They scurried out and ran out of that cell, and there was a vacant cell, and it was like, this is where I'm going to be. And there's no hope. And only thing that was in there was the dentist chair creature. It was like waiting for me to be strapped into it. I have nothing against dentists. I fall asleep in the dentist chair. Had so much dental work. It was, that was it. Then all of a sudden, sometimes I'll start crying. This is hard. when you know that you deserve wrath and not mercy for all the things you've done. And then all of a sudden I got picked up by this person behind me. And then it was Jesus. He could pick me up and held me like a little kid. I could see that the holes in his wrists were pulled, his bones were pulled apart when he picked me up. And I wept on his shoulder. It's hard. Just hold a minute. Hold on a second here. That's a second. It's hard for me to go through this part because I know I deserve that place and he must rescue. So he picked me up and he carried me out of there. And I cried on his shoulder. And I cried like I never cried before. And he carried me out like a little kid. On his shoulder. I was weeping on it. I had my arm around his neck. I was crying in his shoulder. I look over, I can see his wrist holding me and it pulled apart, bones pulled apart. What he went through when that cross hit me like a ton of bricks. He didn't have to do that to rescue us, but he did. So my sense of grace is quite different than what you learn in the textbook. And so he carried me out of there and went up through back to between the cells. We went right back to the wide dusty road, went up through the vortex, and right where we entered in, I went back to where I came in at. I can't explain any of this. This is eternal time. This is a spirit dimension. There's no way to describe it. And so I went through that. Then I went through the same tornado vortex that came back to the rock that I saw. That was standing in that dark void. And there was Jesus. He sat me down. I just stood before him. He kind of wiped some tears out of my eyes. So he spoke to me. He told me, basically there's going to be a point at time I'm going to tell people about this event. And it's so hard because he speaks a few words, but there's so much there. There's nobody speaks like Jesus and has authority. And he said, go in peace or something like that. And I went backwards through the void. I could see that. And I could see like a pancake fire down below and where hell is. And I could see a vision of heaven real quickly. And it ended right on behind the rock. And I floated back through the void. You could hear the music talking about God's character traits and nature and all this stuff. And then I came back and came back. And there I was floating down into the duplex. And then I went through the ceiling, stood floating above there, looking at this fingerprint in a fold of texture, which actually was there. And it's actually that you can't see it with your naked eye. And even after all this was over, I actually climbed on a ladder and flew. And so next thing I knew, I floated like a leaf and feet first into my feet. When I woke up, I couldn't breathe. I was in excruciating pain. It all hit me. And this part's rather foggy. I don't know how, but my friends, my roommates had my neighbor check on me. So he checked on me. And somehow I was standing outside. He must have got me up and took me outside. I was leaning against the porch. And he was getting his truck ready. He'll drag me into it and put me inside of it. We drove out to the hospital. And I know I died a few times on the way because my head was down and my head was banging against the glove box of his truck. And I would be floating above the truck as he's going through Tucson, running through red lights to get me to the hospital. He almost got hit a few times. I told him the events, and he goes, "How do you know that? I didn't say anything. I said, I just saw it. It says, you couldn't have seen it. Your head was banging against the glove box. I was how can I tell somebody I'm chilling above the car as you're driving through town? I'm just wondering why you're going so fast. And then I got to the hospital, and the God had things set up. I had a doctor from India that was there, and he was an ER doctor. They came in and they tried to draw blood. It was viscous. I came back. When I came back, it was 10 till 4. So some people, oh yeah, 4 hours is a long time to be dead. Yeah, it is. I had a little bit of rigor mortis, I guess, setting in. And so they had to get my blood so I could draw blood to find out what I had. And so they put an IV in me and began pumping IV solution into me to hydrate me. And so this doctor from India would, I actually grabbed his lapel and asked him if I was in a cube. He told me no, I was in a hospital, and began asking me questions. Who is running for president? Ronald Reagan. Who's the president? Jimmy Carter. All this stuff. And where do you live? Okay, I gave them phone numbers, and I guess they called my relatives who were in Tucson, and they came by. But I don't know how people found me there. I don't remember too much, but I just remember asking questions, and he had an Indian accent. So I was treated for cholera. The standard treatment back then was IV sedation, IV solution to hydrate you, to get your electrolytes back up. I didn't really have any electrolytes. They were gone. And they were puzzled. I remember they were puzzled by, why is this guy talking? His blood's viscous. But it came back. They were able to draw some blood. And I was in excruciating pain and stuff. So I do not have any memory of how long I was in the hospital. And so it could have been overnight. All I know is that I came back in the early morning hours, and my roommates were there. They brought me home, and they were looking at me like, what happened? They knew something severe happened because they knew what the hospital was, and they couldn't say, you were real sick. And I didn't tell them about hell or nothing. I just didn't know what to say. And I sat, they went off to work. So I sat in a beanbag chair. My dog was really happy to see me, and sitting there stroking and petting my dog, my German Shepherd, and I sat in that beanbag chair. I looked up and I said, Lord Jesus, I never want to go back to that awful place. Take me, I'm yours. That was my salvation prayer. I know it was pretty hot in the morning in there because the swamp cooler doesn't really cool anything off. I felt a cool breeze enter into me that day, and I can't describe that. That's how I got saved. For my life hasn't been the same since. And seeing hell traumatizes you very, very much so. It really does. And so I began my Christian journey, not knowing anything about Christianity. I just got saved, and then get it laid off in Tucson. I had to get back, travel a little bit, trying to find work in the middle of a recession at that time was hard. So I ended up going back home, which was a big setback for me because I didn't, I moved out of the house as soon as I could and haven't been back. And so I went back to my parents' house and got a job and worked, and came back out west. When I came back, nothing fit. The old life I lived was not satisfying. I just didn't get anything out of it, and I was different. And it changed me. I was very quiet, and they were wondering what happened. What happened to you? I didn't tell anybody I went to hell because nobody would believe me, I figured. And so I had the nightmares, and post-traumatic stress, didn't know it. So I came back out west here and ended up Fort Collins and go to college. It's a long story, but that's when I started going to church here in town. So as soon as I started going to church, everything changed. And it was a dramatic change because at that time, I went to a Southern Baptist pastor, and I told him what happened. And the Southern Baptist pastor said, in his deep Southern drawl, Bryan, you should write a book. That's what he said. And then I got water baptized there in the Southern Baptist church there. And then in the youth group, started going to another church. It was a Church of God, Pentecostal church. And so I ended up in that church. And so it was an amazing experience, because when I started going to that church, all kinds of things opened up. And I wasn't that knowledgeable of anything. I was pretty much new in Christianity. But the pastor liked how I prayed, and next thing I knew, I was in charge of the intercessors group there. I didn't know what I was doing. I just learned from the rest of the folks. I didn't come off as a boss. All I did was assign hours and times of people to pray. And we prayed all the time there. It was an incredible experience. And so, and then I was involved in street witnessing, which was pretty powerful. We had a good street witnessing thing going on. And then I was also in the praise band, and I played, I also did a soundboard. So I was very busy in this church. I kept myself busy, and because I didn't want to remember hell. I told pastors, 2 other pastors, they all told me the same thing, to write a book. That's why I started writing it down and putting things together. But I just didn't know how to write till I had to go to college and finish up, because I learned how, or literature, learn how to write, learn how to put things together. And so it was a process. And so I went back to school later on. I had to, kind of dropped out there, because at the time doing the Christian stuff, I was also washing windows on the side. I started a business at the same time, and I was able to quit my other job and devote full time to ministry, having my own business and all that. And did that for a while. And because I was involved in a lot of stuff we did. And eventually I was, I ran a jail ministry, a prison ministry for 10 years. So, and during that time as I went back to college. But anyway, that's a whole new story. But I was, from, let's say, 1982 to at least 1983, until close to 3 years later, 2.5 to 3 years later, suffering from post-traumatic stress. I was working myself to death. I didn't want to go back to the awful place. So if I just would work real hard, I could keep myself saved. That's what I thought. And I was going crazy. And so one night, we had this revival meeting over the weekend. And there were 4 days of it. And we had 30 people a night being water baptized. And so on the 4th night, which was a Sunday, and not getting very little sleep, and I was working full time too. And I know it was a holiday or something, so we had a 3-day weekend. But, so 4 nights of this, I had to go to work the next day, and I was on the weekends would do witnessing and street witnessing and washing windows. But keeping myself busy. And so that night I was assigned a soundboard, and I thought we'd just have a few people get baptized. They had 30 more, and we didn't get out till super late. So I was very mad. I was not in a good mood, very angry at people for leaving me in the church. I locked the church up, secure the building. Nobody helped me. They all ran off. And so I drove home. I was in a bad mood. I had to get up super early to go to work, and I was tired. And I got I lived outside of town about 40 minutes away, in a trailer park between Alton and Fort Collins, a small little enclave. And so I got in there. I had my neighbors taking care of my dog, and my dog was there. I took care of my dog, fed my dog, and got her all taken care of. And I thought I'd just try to lay down and rest for about an hour and a half or so that I had before I had to get up and drive back to town and go to work. So I wasn't in a very good mood. And I laid down on the bed to try to get some rest. I had my alarm clock set in case I fell asleep. And I was just chilling on my back. My dog was sleeping on the bed, at my feet on my bed. And all of a sudden I heard a booming voice. It said, "Awake, arise, stand to your feet." And so how did I respond? I told them to shut up. I'm not getting up. I'm too tired. I got to get up in the morning. And a few choice words on top of that. And I woke up and I snapped out and and the room was dark and my dog's tail was flapping on the bed and real happy. It happened 2 more times. I had the same response. It's just I don't want to get up. Leave me alone. And I ain't getting up. And then the last time it happened, I thought I missed the rapture, really did. So I opened up the back door and about to yell Jesus, but I realized I felt a presence behind me, a very peaceful presence, and I knew something was there. And so I turned around and had a light on in the back bedroom there where I was sleeping. And someone was petting my dogs. German Shepherds have pointy ears. They stand up when you pet their ears, they go back. And her ears were going back. I've never seen my dog so well behaved, so nice. And I heard a still, quiet voice. I knew it was the Lord. He said, do you remember how you left before? I said, yes, Lord. So I went laid back down on bed, in the body, out of the body. I don't know. I'm not the Apostle Paul. I'm not basing that on that at all. The Lord showed me heaven. The reason he showed me heaven was to calm me down about seeing hell because I had tremendous post-traumatic stress. And afterwards, nightmares still continue or whatever, are not nightmares, but some things would trigger memories. They still do, but they don't control me. And I can get a grip real quick. So I know what they are. And before, you had no control over the post-traumatic stress. You can literally go back to a place while standing in a mall and something triggers your memory. And like the people walking towards you, and you remember things that you saw in hell, and you're sweating and you're shaking, and then you realize you're in a mall. It's flashbacks like that are real post-traumatic stress. And so after I saw heaven, I never had those things ever happen again. Or if they did, I had a grip. They don't bother me. And all the things that I saw there, I was able to handle. It's a lot more than I can share here about that. So real briefly, the Lord allowed me to see heaven. So I wrote my second book, Heaven Beckons, about that. And that is just about what happened. As I try to tell people, I did not get any divine revelation from there during the experience. Yet I did, but it's when I came back that all this stuff was, what happened to me up there, what was explained to me up there is in the Bible. I can't say it any better than that. So what I did when I wrote my book, I wrote some of those things in the first part of the book. Like one of the things is Revelations chapter 2 and 3. So I put that in there. And so it's a work of creative nonfiction. It means I take different events of my life and put them and mix them up, and built characters that are composite characters, so nobody knows who anybody else, but all those events that happened or actually happened. And so I took the liberty of using a pastor's sermon in it to talk about Revelations chapter 2 and 3, about the state of the end-time church. And the whole point of the first part of the book was to show how messed up the church is. But the Lord's in control, and he works for his stumps. He has great grace. And we mess up. None of us are perfect. I mean, everyone teaches something that's screwy. I'll even say John MacArthur taught something screwy back in September of 24th, 1980. He said that if you receive the mark of the beast, you can still get saved in the tribulation period, which is, again, scripture, but he said it. But I know he later recanted that. I'm not saying that. But just an example of certain people who, everyone does something kooky. And despite that, God works through us. And that's what I saw is great grace. That's what I came back with. And so I wanted to convey that. No matter what, he works through us. And he gets things done in a remarkable way. He doesn't let us get in the way of what he wants done. He'll still work through us to get it done. And so that's what I learned from that. And so what happened when he told me I lay down, remember how I left before, and next thing I knew, I was floating in the dark void again, going through the light, hearing the same music, but this time it was different. I was going home. And this was my destiny. This is where I'm going. I'm going to heaven, and I'm accepted in the beloved. That little phrase in the Bible, we are accepted in the beloved, means something to me that probably a lot of people like grass. I don't deserve to be accepted. But I am. Because of what he did for us, because of what he did on the cross. And so there was Jesus again. This time, when I saw him, he wasn't wearing a hood over his face like I went before, but I saw his face, and I can't describe what he looked like. People would say, "What did he look like?" Well, I'll be like Zechariah. I saw one like the Son of Man, because he would change. One minute he's Jewish, next minute he is the Lord of Glory. Most of the time I saw him very Jewish looking, and he had kind of a brownish hazel tint to his eye, hazel green tint to his eyes. Other times there were flaming fire, pools of fire. Other times they would change irises, would change like blue. It's one like the Son of Man. And he told me, "Welcome. You've been through a lot, Bryan. Come follow me." And so I did. And so I described in the book what happened. We walked up to Pearly Gate. And there's a big, huge white pearl. The colors are outstanding there. And I saw angels coming out of the gate, of the Pearly Gate. There's a real narrow gate. And so the angels would come out and they would go do tasks, like the Bible says. Angels are ministering spirits to make his ministers flames of fire and stuff. And so these angels were going out and doing tasks like maybe saving somebody from like going across the street, or pulling him out of a flaming car, and they snap out of something and they go, "Where is that person who rescued you?" "What person? There was nobody there. We just found you along the side of the road." And so those types of events happen. And that's what I was seeing. And they were doing tasks for the Lord. And I knew they were coming from a place called a council chamber. I just intuitively knew that. And so they were getting their marching orders, going forth, doing whatever God wanted, carrying out. Now, does God need angels and human beings to do everything? No. But he loves us, and he includes us in his plans anyway. And so it is an amazing thing to see, to be used of the Lord like that. And despite ourselves sometimes, how he uses us. Those are the type of things I saw in heaven. So he just motioned for me. He was talking to me. He went in front of me. We had to go through the gate. And you go through it single file. And at the time, I knew intuitively to pay attention to every single detail, and all the stuff's in the Bible. So when I was walking through that tunnel, I just noticed this is kind of strange, because it was rough hewn, reminding me of nails and a tip of a spear. I could see a tip of a spear point going through this gate, narrow gate. And narrow is the way, the Bible would say. And so I see Jesus in front of me, the beautiful color of white, and there's and these blue swirls in it, really beautiful light coming through there to light up the passageway. But there's no colors that I can ever match or describe could even come close to that. So it touched the wall, and this people get mad at me when I say this, but it was like looking through a veil darkly. Could hear voices. Like sometimes I really couldn't understand what people were saying, but I could at one time or not. I had an idea what was going on. And then and I see Jesus walk in front of me. It's hard to explain, but it was like looking into the past and seeing how the scribes and Pharisees were plotting to kill Jesus. And then how somebody came up to him and they paid him. Couldn't see their features. I couldn't tell you what they looked like. It was like looking through a veil darkly. And then I saw all kinds of things. And I saw how Jesus was betrayed, abandoned. I saw him being put on trial. I saw him, and then I saw him bear false witness. Saw all that. Saw him being mocked by Herod. And when I came, why I say that is just that's the power of the gospel. It's something that used to be taught but no longer is. We settled for the gospel. We cheapened the gospel. We make it a sales job. There's no punch to it. So this is what the Lord showed me out of that one experience. So I've been preaching it ever since. If you're plotted against somebody, have them plotted against you, how does it make you feel? Have you sold out people for 30 pieces of silver? I sure have. Have you abandoned your friends in the garden? Mm-hmm. After you said you would never abandon them? Absolutely. I was like Peter. Did you deny? Oh, yes, I denied people. Oh, yes. I when I was running in the world and I was an atheist and all of that, I was confronted by federal agents that wanted me to rat on somebody. And I told them, no, I'm not going to prison for that. I got out of there and told the guy, you got a snitch in your midst. But, I didn't rat on anybody who did. But to get out of trouble, sometimes some people will. And then what about in work? How many times we bore false witness to other people to cover our tracks and told stories about them and gossiped about them that's not true and bore false witness. And then how we beat people with our words. I beat people with my fist, and everything that happened to Jesus from Matthew chapter 26 to 27. You need to read that. I mean, how many times and then go into the rest of the gospel accounts. Jesus was dragged as he was beaten. Then he was dragged to front of Herod, and Herod and his cronies wanted Jesus to perform a miracle. Well, how many times have I said, "Oh Lord, if you get me out of a jam and do this for me, I'll follow you," or let me see you do something. If you were so good, you would never let children die. You would never do that. I can't follow you because you don't do anything. Perform for me. How many times have we said things like that? And then we put burdens on people that they cannot bear, like they put on Jesus the cross. The gospel account becomes very personal because it exposes our sin nature, our iniquity in our hearts. And then to see the crucifixion and how the cross was slammed real hard into, it was like it lifted up and know that Jesus' joints were pulled out. The bones were pulled out, just like Psalms 22 says. And what does he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I go, now you do, but forgive them. Now they know what they do. Why don't we teach the gospel like that? Teach people what grace means. Where people can say, oh Lord, take me, I'm yours. I owe you my life. I don't deserve it. Look at all the stuff I did. And I justified it. Yeah, the scribes and Pharisees justified it. I sure did. I'm sure Peter and all the guys justified abandoning Jesus. I abandoned people, lied about people, did all those things. He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Then Jesus hung on that cross. This is the part that blows me away. He took the full blunt of God's wrath in our place. And before he cried out on the cross, why have you forsaken me? And it was like, he answers in the silence of the scene, you divide my garments. You spat on me. You've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. You mocked me. You crucified me. And then he said, Telestistii, it is finished. The sacrifice for our sins was finished. To expose what we're really like to each other, and then forgive us. I mean, Jesus took our wrath, God's wrath in our place as a substitutionary atonement, hanging on that cross, suspended above God and man. He didn't have to. When I was in heaven, that's what I saw when I was walking in that corridor, Jesus in front of me. Then Jesus came out, and a bright light came out. We came to the other end of this, and I remember seeing Jesus, and I still think of it. Nobody deserved to be treated like Jesus. He didn't deserve as much of that. But that happened to him. And it shows you humanity's inhumanity toward each other. It really does. We will slay goodness. We can't wait to see someone who's good get their punishment. And we all rejoice when somebody's bad, but somebody does well and they're prospering. You just can't wait to see them fall. This is human nature. And the Word of God exposes what's in our heart. We want all these things, but we don't want Jesus. We want what Jesus gives, but we don't want Jesus. All that. And yet, He paid our price for our sin and our iniquity and bore a punishment for us. There's a love like that as I can't comprehend to this day. Why would you do that? Because God so loved the world. But men love darkness more than light. And whoever believes on Him will not perish, but have everlasting life. I'd like to have everlasting life, don't you? And so when He stepped out, and Jesus went through, exited the place into a bright light. I came out in the bright light, and I was in heaven. And all this is my nicknames for it. In places just for me to be able to articulate things. I'm going to talk real briefly about heaven real quickly in this, so don't take too much more time. But I came out and I entered into a land of what I call liquid love. This was a love that is so profound, so cleansing, so kind and merciful and undeserved. And you know it, and you're so grateful for Jesus. So I came out. And I call it a field of reunion. I'll just give you a few examples of what happened. So I walked out and I saw Jesus. I'll say this, there are no children in hell. I'll probably shock some people. The Lord says, let the little children come unto me and forbid them not. Okay? Isaiah 55 says what? So shall the words go forth from my mouth, they will accomplish what I intend. I don't care what denomination or affiliation you are. Your idea of predestination is screwy. That's all I got to say. And it's done more damage to the body of Christ than you know. And here's all these children in heaven running up to Jesus, and Jesus gets on the ground, starts talking to them. He's very affable. All these kids around it, Jesus, some angels and some people too around him. And he's picking them up. He's tossing a little tyke in the air and catching them and laughing and stuff. He look at me and let me look at what's going on. He wanted me to go look. And I was watching him. I turned and I looked. There's two people coming out. A lot of people coming through that gate. And all of a sudden I saw, I'll give you a couple examples. There's one person that came through there. Him and his dad had a really drag-out fight. He was a Christian. He tried to witness to him. His dad was really mean and didn't want nothing of it. He was very verbally abusive to his kids. And so I knew about his life, too, all right there. And that he passed away. His dad passed away, too, before that. But all of a sudden, I saw how he got phone calls. You should go talk to Dad. Go from his siblings, his sisters and brother would call. Go see Dad. He's dying of cancer. He wants to talk to you. And he wouldn't do it. I don't know. He would not ever go back to see him. They don't want to see that old man. He had a grudge against him. He was a Christian though, but had a grudge against his dad for turning away from Christ and all this stuff. He just had enough of it. And he saw his dad walking toward him. He said, "Thank you, son. I remembered what you said about Jesus, and on my deathbed I cried out, I want to thank you." They hugged. All the animosity they had toward each other was erased. That's why I call this field the field of reunion. It was like every tear, everything was wiped away. All the sorrow was gone. And if you don't think something like that would affect you and seeing it, I don't know what to say. And then I saw some people who lost their children through cancer or whatever. Either a couple will come through together. I don't know, they died together or they died maybe individually, and they would see their child there. and then he'd grow up before him, and they would go off into heaven, pick up where they left off. And then the most remarkable thing I saw was this young Christian gal comes out. She passed on, and all of a sudden she saw this baby crawling toward her. She had an abortion. Saw her. It sounds so weird, and I could see all my critics yelling and screaming. They go ahead, yell and scream. But the baby grew up in front of her and said, "Hi, Mom. Don't worry about it. We have all time to play." That womb that she carried in the guilt and the shame was erased. And that's heaven. That's heaven. You see, Jesus, when God started something in the Garden of Eden, and then we fell away from God's original design of what it's really like to live with Him, and we have to learn a bitter lesson. And I don't, like you all, I don't really like it much as either. But we go through pain and suffering in this life, so we learn what evil is. We will learn the knowledge of good and evil. So when you have to learn that, so you reject evil. And unfortunately, we fell, human beings fell. When we go through a lot of stuff, when we get to heaven, we're sealed, eternally His, and there's no chance of rebellion again because we really learn what it means. Another thing that I learned from heaven is what it means to be created in God's image and likeness. I get people mad at me when I say this. You're not created in God class. You're not a little God in God class. No. What the image and likeness of God is something that's been restored to us as believers. It's called the fruit of the Spirit. We were designed to govern our world reflecting certain character traits of God, of love, joy, peace, righteousness, defend the fatherless, the widow. We're to show love and kindness. That's the reflection. That's the image and likeness of God we were to govern our world by. It wasn't like we were little gods in God class doing all this stuff. And that's something the Lord wants to straighten out in the Christian church. And it really does. That needs to go by the wayside. I'm adamant about that. And all people have to do is to say, hey, I taught you wrong. Forgive me. I can't do anything about the books they wrote or whatever, but just know that they renounced that publicly and you will be restored. You didn't know any better. That's all I can say. And it's one thing the Lord always told me, he says, let the people know that. Let them know that. And so that's why we have the fruit of the Spirit. And in heaven, it's a reality. The land of liquid love and the mercy and the justice, and you realize what you really are like as a human being, what God really intended. And you don't want to leave there. So the Lord took me on a short tour of heaven and showed me around. The things that I saw are in my book, Heaven Beckons. But it wasn't until after I came back that I got the revelation of it. Like He showed me a vineyard with these big grapes. Some of them were the size of basketballs or these big red balls you use for school and stuff, and baseball, golf ball size grapes and stuff. And I didn't get it until I read the book of Revelation and about the grapes of God's wrath, the wine press of God's wrath, because there was a wine press there. And so after I got back from seeing heaven, I was drawn into Bible prophecy because of that. And I now I understand what it means. So I got involved in Bible prophecy from that. And I showed me other things. A place where they were baking bread, and, these big, huge loaves of bread, and people were helping, and angels were baking this bread. And it's the Word of God, distributing it. It's just symbols of that. And so I went to a forest. And so years later, after about maybe a year or so, I know you read through the entire Bible, so I'm reading through the Bible after that, my heaven experience, and I came to Isaiah 61. And I read the whole thing. And the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me to heal the broken, to give the good news to the crushed in spirit, to heal the brokenhearted, to set the captives free, set those who are oppressed free. teach this is the day of the Lord, salvation and and judgment from God. Teach the whole counsel of God. Give the oil of joy for the spirit of heaviness. Okay, it goes on. That you may become the trees of righteousness, the plantings of the Lord. We are to bear the image of his, because we're not right. We bear the image of his righteousness as one of the reflections of the character traits of God we are to do. Live right and wisely in front of people. And we fail at all. We do fail at all that, but the grace leads us home. And so that, and the reason for that, so we can build back the waste places that many generations helped create. That we restore order to it. We'll restore love, passion, joy, peace, goodness, wholeness, soundness in a world that hates it. Go do anything to trip you up and to mock you. That's what the Lord means by do good to those who spitefully use you. Because, and also you need to be wise about all that too. I'll get into all that. And so those are things I saw there. And everything that I saw had biblical implications that just blows my mind. And so saw the river of life. I can't describe it too well, other than it was like Ezekiel's river that he describes. Comes from the throne of God. It's huge. You can walk out in it. I didn't walk out in it. There's tributaries that flow out of it. The tributaries don't flow into rivers like they do here, like they in this life. But in heaven, all the tributaries flow out from the river of life. And it's just the laws of physics I don't think apply there. I mean, that's all I got to say. And so I saw people in the river and stuff. And I noticed that if you walk in the river, you think your feet are wet. When you come out, they're dry. I'm just telling you. And it's refreshing. So we came to this one spot. I call it a tributary. We walked along the river and came up to this one spot. And all these kids were playing in the river, in the tributary of this river of life. And they were just playing and splashing. And Jesus gets in there and starts splashing the kids. But and he said, ready, ready, ready. They all start kicking water, splashing water all over me. So I got in the water. I didn't splash anything on Jesus, but I was with the kids. And from that, this will sound strange, I learned what it means to be a human being. Something happened. Yeah, I got soaking wet, but when I came out, I was dry. But I was cleansed. Something happened. When I saw an aspect of Jesus, the different attributes of him that the Bible teaches, but we just gloss over. Or we try to take advantage of it or things. But I walked away from there. He said, it's time to head back, So we went to the heavenly city, and we went through the banquet hall. And I'll shorten this. We went to the banquet hall where the wedding feast was being prepared. I saw that. We walked from one end to the other. Then after that, we came through and went back to the gate. And I looked back and wow, I could see heaven, and he spoke to me. I went back through the gate. We went back to where to the landing point, the same landing point I landed before. This time I wasn't judged. I was accepted and beloved. He showed me heaven. He blew on me. I flew back and came back, and I woke up before my alarm clock rang, and the sun was shining, and it was just coming up and shining through the window. I let my dog out, and I got up and just simply felt so good. I didn't get any sleep. I felt great. When I looked up above me in my bed, and there's a sliding door. They never stored anything there, a storage bin above the bed in this trailer. It was taken off its hinges, it was laying down. So that's where I went through and came back the same way. So everything had some type of proof to it. But the most amazing proof I had about heaven was when I went to work that morning. I went to work. I worked in buildings and grounds at Montgomery Wards, electrician, whatever, all my backgrounds. I did air conditioning, heating, and also janitorial work and filling potholes and stuff in the parking lot, and general all-purpose grunt And so did that. So I went to work, and here's my supervisor, this little lady. She looked at me, she said something like, "Holy cow, who were you with last night?" I said, "Nobody." And when it's all I was with Jesus. Because then what she goes, "You are glowing." I'm going, "What? You are glowing." I said, "Really?" And she says, "I don't know what it is, but you got to get busy and go to work because we got a toilet. You got to go and clog it." So I go back where somebody clogged up a toilet. So I look in the mirror and I go, "I'm not glowing. What is this?" So I spent that whole day at work, and customers would go by and look at you. And it wasn't glowing like Moses or nothing, but there was a glow about it. And it lasted 3 days. This went on for 3 days. And I remember I got called to the floor of one of the wards near the front of the store going into the mall. I had to put some displays out. I mean, put them together for the clerks to stack the clothes and stuff on. So I'm doing that. A little kid runs up to me and says, Mister, you saw Jesus, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." When the parents were yelling to the kid, "Get away from him. He's glowing." And I go in the bathroom, I look, I go get home at night, I turn off the lights, look in the mirror. I'm not glowing. What is this? And so that happened for 3 days. And, I thought I would go outside. I take my dog for a walk, and we would go where's some ponds near the trailer park, and I go walk around there. And all the yellow birds were migrating in the fall there. And they're all there, and they didn't fly away. We were walking like in the middle of a flock of yellow birds. One was sitting on a post, some barbed wire fence post there, and I was walking along like I normally do with the dog. And my dog wasn't chasing the birds, and the birds weren't afraid of it, and this bird didn't get up and leave and fly away either. And I thought, wow, these birds are really nice. I mean, this is interesting. And then I never had anything like this happen since. Another time I was down by the Poudre River. I was just sitting there chilling out, resting after a long walk. And my dog was there. I think she was chewing on a stick. The German Shepherds get tree trunks or whatever they chew on. And there are ducks and geese swimming around, and my dog didn't chase them or jump after like they normally would. And other birds would land. I even had a bird land on my leg, a robin. And they're all around me. Birds, my dog was behaved. A fox came up and got a drink of water. And I'm thinking, boy, the animals here in Colorado are sure friendly. And, people walked by and said, "There's that Dr. Doolittle. Who is this guy? He's glowing." And I was kind of getting tired of that. But that was the last day I glowed because, I after that, every time I went anywhere, the animals never did that ever again. And my dog would see a goose or something or a duck and just jump in the water and try to get it, and the thing fly off like dogs normally do. But I've never had that experience since. But that's kind of, like a confirmation. Too many people saw that. And to this day, I always say I probably glowed not like Moses, but just because I was so happy or I was different. It's like, just glowed. I don't know. That's pretty much a shorthanded version of the heaven testimony. There's a lot more to it, but that's my heaven and hell, all rolled up into one.
Wow. So many questions. First question I'd love to ask is your parents, for example, when you came back from witnessing all of that, did you talk to your parents about it?
Not till later. I didn't talk to them. They knew something happened. I wouldn't talk to anybody. My friend who went with me, we moved back out of Tucson. I went one place. He couldn't get a job. He went back home. But I met him there. But they knew something happened, and I wouldn't talk about it. And it was till after I was talked to the pastors. The 3 pastors told me to write a book, and then I told my mom and dad about it. And my mom helped with some of the typing of the book. I mean, the original edition, which is only about 50 or 60 pages, it's very narrative. It's just and I couldn't do anything with it. I saw this happened. It was just too much. So I didn't know how to write. So I had to go back to college. After I got married, I went back to college and my wife went back to college too. Then I learned about literature, how to write, and different forms of writing and styles. And then I sat down, took all my notes, and I wrote my first book, Hell's Dominion, on that one, off of those pages, because then I can put things together. And I try to explain it in the book, in the appendix, how I wrote that, just so people will know. And so, and then my mom knew about it. She thought it was, why didn't you tell me sooner? I said, I didn't think anybody would believe me. I mean, that's what, most people are not.
What about your dad? Did he believe you?
He believed me. He knew something happened. He said, we are praying for you. And when you got saved, your mom and I were dancing, and with our neighbors, Richie and Penny, were dancing in the backyard. So, they knew something happened.
When did you finally decide to go public? And not just to the pastors, but I'm talking about like writing a book, being on the interviews.
Okay.
This one.
Well, and as I went to a new church, and the pastor there, I told him about it. He wanted me to tell the congregation, so he set something up. So it was probably 86, roughly around 86 time frame. He had me go and give my testimony in front of a church of 2,000 people.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
But he only gave me 10 minutes to do it. I took 13 or 14. But we had 34 people literally rushed up to the stage to get saved. I said, this is what I'm called. This is what I'm called to do.
Wow. I'm curious, when you finally stepped out to share your testimony, did you have any resistance? Were you scared?
I was scared. Yeah, I was very scared because you have a testimony like mine, people are going to resist you. They're going to accuse you of making it up. You're just trying to get money out of it. You're just doing this or that. And that's not my intent at all. It takes courage to tell your after-death experience.
Well, and back then, it's not like today. Everyone wants to hear near-death experiences. Back then, it was not a popular topic. They can lock you up for a long time and in a crazy house.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But when I told that pastor, the next thing I knew, I was running a jail ministry for 10 years. So I was able to preach, these 45 to 48 weeks out of the year on that Sunday night. I gave my testimony many times there. And so we saw waves of revival hit that jail and all that. We wrote and all that. And I got hired, went back to school. My field was social work and criminal justice. So started working for the sheriff's department, then eventually got a job in the jail and so forth, et cetera. So
you were talking about different levels in hell. So I'm assuming there are, I think in one of I think it was you. Did you see Hitler in hell too?
Yeah, I was doing it. I don't like to tell people who I saw. That's not my thing. But I was doing the docudrama, and I only tell one person that I saw there because that was Reinhard Heydrich, the author of the Final Solution, blonde-haired dude. He was killed in 1942 when Czechoslovakia, Czech resistance fighters assassinated him. And there's a movie called Anthropod about that too. And I have no problem telling about him. But in other words, I didn't want to tell about people I saw or names because it'd be too sensationalizing. But during the interview, when we were doing the documentary, he kind of boxed me. Did you see anybody else? I said, yeah, I saw Adolf Hitler. He was inside of a cell on fire. He was burning on fire. It was like inside of one of the ovens of Auschwitz or something. That's like a lot of those places have ovens. And so he was experiencing each person that died, he was experiencing their death. So at this time, all these years later, who knows, he could be being in the gas chambers, each individual, each kid. It could be the kids being experimented on, the people being experimented on. he'll go through every single one of those things. It's not improving; it's getting worse. He was. There's something that saw him in the flames that can't even express was the hate he had for himself and the world. It's just unbelievable rage, and his true nature was coming out. It's something kind of shocks. It gave him his power. It attracted the demons so he could do his deeds too. So,
but it is interesting how you talk about all these other near-death experiences that you see on the web, where people talk about how they see the light, they cross over, they see their relatives, warm feelings, united, but then all of a sudden they get, they go through the tunnel again and they're back in their body. And I can't help but to think about the lady, the deer pudding. Wow. How many of those near-death experiences are false? That's frightening.
It is frightening. That's one of the reasons I guess he had me at an appointed time to start talking about it. And I've been doing it since he told me to start teaching it. And to warn people about that, because not everything that's what happens is people get a false sense that God, he's all love and very new age and very occultic and I can live anything I want to live and I'm going to make heaven, just go to the light. I'm going. That's typical of these creatures and the deception that they want to project on the world. And so inadvertently, these people are being used. I've talked to some of them. I was contacted by somebody, the lady's group was named Atwater or something a long time ago. I don't remember how they contacted me or what. I got contacted, so I was talking to, I guess, one of her proteges. And I told them my experience, and they went, they weren't going to use it because it was a hell experience. And because they didn't believe that hell experiences were real. It's just a very new age and just projection of you have something wrong with you and you didn't really see it because everybody else has a great experience and you didn't. So we can't accept it. I learned something from them. The guy that was talking to was a child, and when he died and he was underwater for about 20 minutes in ice cold water, and he came back and he saw heaven, he saw Jesus, and he told me his experience, and I know he did. And but he got wrong people, and bad company corrupts good habits, and so he became a new ager. There's nothing I can really do about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I interviewed this one lady, Keisha, several episodes ago, and she was a witch. She was a witch, casting spells, and was about to marry Satan. Had a red dress that was going to follow through with the ceremony, and she was taken to hell, and Jesus showed her in hell where witches go.
Yeah.
And I thought, so when you were describing hell and you saw witches, but there are like almost like multiple levels to hell, right? I remember listening to Howard Storm's testimony.
It's multiple levels. There's multiple levels. It's a pit. It's a roundabout, just like Ezekiel chapter 32 explains. There's cells embedded in the walls of the pit. And it's it's bottomless. And Revelation says it's a bottomless pit. The different type of dimension is a spiritual dimension. And it's not like our 3D world. It's a different, similar but different. It's a spiritual world, spirit dimension.
And it's interesting how you were talking about the one lady, how she was so manipulative and to her children. That's interesting, that manipulation. These children probably had a different purpose in life. God wanted them find that purpose and fulfill that purpose. But she almost was overriding their purpose. And that's a huge sin.
It is. A lot of people. Another thing I saw mostly was how damaged people are, and they take their wounds and stuff and they act upon them. They become that. Jesus wants to heal the broken heart, and how he wants to take that pain away from people. And it's a process. And I won't get into how all that works, but It's a process, but most people are not willing to. They want to live because they have power or something, or they get attention from it, and all kinds of reasons. But
something else, as you were sharing your story, you were talking about, well, welcome to paradise. That was interesting. Welcome to paradise. No, thank you. But I thought it was interesting that you had that guy that you were saying that he was killed, that you saw him. Do you feel, was that really him, or was it the demons were trying to appear as him? Do you really feel like you saw him in hell?
Which person?
When the guy that was killed in a drive-by shooting or something.
Oh yeah. That was actual friend. It wasn't, somebody you grew up with in the neighborhood. He turned really bad. He was a really nasty dude when he left the party. I was glad he left my party because he was obnoxious, tries to fight everybody. One of those just honoring person. So him and another friend took off. And that wasn't him. I think that was actually a spirit that emanated, projected him. It wasn't him. He wasn't there. It was a spirit, because it was like people I knew in my mind that I knew was being projected in front of me. That's why people, when they die, they say they see their relatives or something. In most cases, they don't know Jesus, and it's a new age type of experience. They'll say that too. But
well, another thing you mentioned, you were talking about how when you looked at yourself, it's like you were wearing these rags, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think you had rags on?
Well, I wondered that until I read in the Bible, "Our righteousness is but filthy rags." Like I said, everything that happened to me is found in the scripture. I mean, I'm just telling you, all points right there.
Another thing I'd love to get into, and sensitive topic, AI. I'm curious how you're knowing what you know today as you're looking, processing this world. What do you make of all this technology? Are you excited about it?
Not really. It's just pretty much, it's preparing for the mark of the beast and able to control and manipulate people. Pretty much, if you know how the demonic world works, as most people don't, their whole goal is subjectivism. It's a subjective reality. It is a false reality. They want you to not deny reality, negate the real, and what God really has intended. And so AI is a perfect example of that. They can put you in metaverse classes. You can live in an unreal world. They want to put you in a 15-minute smart city with these goggles. You're stuck there and you can't travel no more than 5-10 minutes away. And they're a great world designed for people. That's the world of the Antichrist. It's a world of make-believe, subjective reality. It's not truth. It's not built on any truth, objective reality, or truth at all. They deny that. And that's what AI helps bring about, really, because now they have Deep Lake or whatever that is, where they can take people and make them almost look real. I saw a few of them. You can they're getting it perfected to where it looks almost, 4K, whatever it is, digital, real. They will take these old photographs taken back in the 1840s. They can put the AI on them and bring back the people with facial expressions on them and stuff. It's pretty weird. And so AI is a form of unreality. It's a subjective world.
What's even more scary is the transhumanism, the Neuralink. Once you connect to the system, can the system control you?
Well,
that's almost like died itself.
According to Klaus Schwab, they can.
So that's a scary future. Definitely a lot of people are not aware of.
No.
But the AI future is not looking bright. I mean, if you really zoom out and you just see, I know that right now there are a lot of benefits. Use ChatGPT, all those different things to speed up the workflow. But if you zoom out and see where it's all going, it's really scary.
It reminds me of the series on Prime Video or whatever, and the Rings of Power. So I'm sitting there, they got these rings, and the elves had to get their 3 rings to get this tree back to life. and it will save the elderdomdom if they do that. And so the rings have good. But the end result is one ring binds them all. It's evil. And very few people see that so far. I mean, in the storylines, the second season just ended. I mean, they're too short of seasons. But anyway, that's pretty much what it reminds me of. There's good things about Neuralink you can put in, or you can get somebody who's paralyzed, they get their feeling back in their arm and they can move around or walk. Great. But what's the end result of it? There's evil intent in that, and that is to control people. And so the mark of the beast are probably something like a Neuralink. They have tattoos that can melt into your skin now and hook you up to the internet and monitor your heartbeat, things like that. And they have that stuff right now. And just imagine if they could that be in you where they can read your thoughts, or they can control you in some manner with a Neuralink and monitor you and track. They always want to monitor and surveil everything. They have a 5G world they want to send, where 5G or 6G or whatever, where they can just monitor, track, and surveil everything you do. They want to know your thought. The idea here is we have a sin nature. And in a way, the fall not only is evil, was also, in a way, our protection. Sounds weird, because when the devil comes and creates this perfect world, we find out it's not. We're going to rebel against it because human nature is rebellious. And so how do you cure? So the devil is trying to convince people to how to stop human rebellion against the devil's kingdom. So why not Neuralink? Why not the 5G system, 6G system, whatever, the AI? And that way he can control, track, monitor your thought, and get the you're like a board. You have mechanical implants in you. You're a cyborg or something. So your ears only controlled and tracked, and you make you behave, have right human relationships, and group love, group this, group that's all collectivism.
Yeah, I have a friend here in town, and I wish he would come on and share this publicly, but he had the vision, and the Lord spoke to him years ago when he was not walking with the Lord. And he's saying that before there were wars against man versus man, right? And in the last days, it'll be men versus the machine. Mm-hmm. And Jesus will come and rescue us from that. It's profound. And yeah, I mean, there's a way that seems right to a man, right? And it leads to death and destruction. And that's what I feel like the technology, it's easy sell. Come on, put a chip on. We can track your child. You'll never lose him. Yeah. You'll never lose anything. This whole, like, in the world of speeding things up, AI is very convenient. Well, convenience doesn't always lead to good things.
You got digital currency. You don't have to worry about your wallet, and you don't have to worry about people stealing your thing.
But think about this. Where can you run once you're connected to the Neuralink and everything else? There's nowhere they got you.
They got you.
Back in the day, physically, you can go somewhere, run. But once you're connected to the brain, if they can monitor your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, like, what else you got? That's it. Yeah,
they have the device now that came out. I don't know where they got it developed, how far they took it. They're probably a lot farther. It's 2 years ago, where they were using it online to monitor their employees if they were daydreaming or not. And that made the news. It was like, wow, that's a little too much. And monitoring see if you're working. No, you're daydreaming. No, you're not. We're not going to pay you for daydreaming.
Wow. Interesting. Something else you said, you spoke to Jesus like in thought. And 9 years ago, I had a face-to-face conversation with Jesus. It wasn't a dream, but it was one of those things where I was like a dream within a dream. I was able to move my arms. So I remember what he smelled like, what he looked like. It was beyond this world. And that's something else that we spoke, I guess not telepathy, but more like thought to thought. And it was interesting that a lot of people that I talked to that crossed over and had a conversation with you, that it was through thought. And in a way, it's kind of like what Neuralink and all that stuff, they're saying that it's you'll be able to communicate the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I read the scripture about the Pharisees and stuff sent out some spies to spy on Jesus to entrap him what he said. So they come back and said, "There's nobody speaks like this man." So there's a lot of truth in that statement that most people miss. He's speaking, you hear his words out of his mouth, but all this stuff comes with it. It gives it the authority. It's like, you're speaking to me. And this happens in churches and when you're preaching. It's like, you're preaching to me, preacher. It's that type of thing. It's more intense than that. I can only imagine what those guys were probably feeling, listening to Jesus. Like, wow, they left, we're not touching him.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I had my conversation with Jesus face to face and we spoke, I always assumed that if I ever meet Jesus, he's kind of like like a tree hugger kind of. That's what they describe, like this lovey-dovey, just come give me a hug. That's not the person I was talking to.
No.
I knew that first of all, he was tightly, like the robe was tightly fitted. He was in great shape, looked like a warrior. And I knew that he was loving, kind to me, but I knew this is somebody you do not want to cross.
Yeah, he's the Lord of glory. I always, I try to tell people, he's affable, he's fun to be around, but he's the Lord of glory, and he can get that flames of fire in his eyes and get his hair can turn white. It's like the Bible says, and he's the Lord of glory. You don't want to mess with him. But it's also a love and compassion there too. It's really difficult if you've never seen him to try to explain it. Yeah.
Well, and I like how you said he's kind of like almost like a man of few words.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how it was. Everything he said had meaning and power to it.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't loose with his words. And I remember growing up in Eastern Europe in the 90s where perestroika, it was rough. And they ran the streets like they ran prisons back then. When I grew up in Kiev in Ukraine. And I remember even on the streets, like a lot of Eastern Europeans don't smile much and don't say much to like the older ones, because they knew that for every word you say, you'll have to answer. So they were very cautious and very selective about each word they say.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting that, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. So in Eastern Europe, you said the wrong thing, all of a sudden, Boris disappeared. Nobody knows where Boris went. A little birdie went and told somebody, the KGB, and they came and got him. And so people were very cautious about the words. And so when I read the Bible, it talks about let your yes be yes and let your no be no. And when I spoke to Jesus, every thought, every word was so intentional. And that was powerful. And so when you said that, when you talked to him, that it was very well thought out. And then almost like there's so much respect because every word is so intentional. It goes so much deeper.
Yes. When I read the Bible, I come back and I read the Bible. That's how I read it. There's a lot of, sometimes all of a sudden it hits me and I see all these scriptures that connect to certain verses. And it's from that experience. It's almost like he's speaking from the Bible. It's the living word of God. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and the Bible, you meditate on the one word. I heard somebody say that each word has like, I don't know how true it is. This is just an interesting statement that has like 7 different meanings. I'm sure it has probably even more. But yeah, that's the more you meditate on something in different seasons, it means different things. It's kind of like when you chew on something for a while, like a thought, all of a sudden, so many more, you get more revelations out of that. And that's how the Bible speaks to you in different, like I remember when I was young reading the Bible, it didn't mean as much to me when I was older, going through trials, right? It speaks to you differently. It has a lot of it has different kind of depth when you're older.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's a lot more depth to it. And it never grows old. There's always something new out of it. I think I got something, and boy, I do not know everything. Because it just speaks to you. Looking at the Beatitudes and the blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy, really hit me hard, because that's how my wife was, very merciful person. And it spoke volumes in ways I can't even articulate now what it's like.
Speaking of your wife, I'm sorry to hear that she's no longer with us here.
Yeah.
How did she take this story?
She found out about it right away, but when she accepted it, she supported what I did. So we were married 36 years, and we grew together. And I saw the Lord transform her life into a very powerful woman of God. She would never say that to herself. She was very merciful, kind, and she would she didn't want to teach or anything like that. She was too afraid of public speaking. But when she did, was teaching kids or teaching other people, she could teach, and she could write very well, better than I can. And so it was, how do I explain it? How you grow together when you grow older together, and you learn what love really is like. And so it was right. She got COVID in it was 2023 in December. I had it too, but I had it before, so mine wasn't very severe, but severe enough. But she got it real bad, and it lasted until January 24, and didn't get the jab, nothing like that. We were both jab free, but it affected her, and so you have all these accounts over in Europe, medical, Denmark, I think Sweden, Israel, UK. Their medical profession says that people who even if you didn't get that stab in the arm there, you could have the same effect. It'll drop you. I'm just watching my words here, but that's what happened to her. All these young athletes were dropping. My wife and I'm not in good shape like I used to be because she's sort of passing. I haven't exercised too much because I got injured. Trying to get back into that. But we hiked everywhere, and so she was very athletic, and she ran. And so we were at the park when it happened, where she's doing her routine, and she ran up the hill. This was about 35, 40 yards to the top. It's not that small hill. And I went to the car to get our water, and I saw her at the top of the hill finishing it, and she waved, and I started walking down the hill, and I reached in the car and got my water bottles, and then I didn't see her. I didn't know what happened. And I saw her legs kicking, and I just didn't know what was going on. So I ran up to her, and there she was. She was foaming at the mouth. I thought she got stung by a bee, but there are no bees out because it's too cold. So I called 911. I have so much CPR training and stuff. I rolled her to her side, so she would aspirate, called 911, and I said, I didn't know what I said. She could have got stung by a bee. They said, hold on, we're getting there. She'll be okay, whatever, all that. But she wasn't doing too good. And so they asked me, they didn't know I work for the sheriff's department. I have years and multiplied years of first aid, CPR, all that. So they were telling me, counter breathing. Okay. I just count, you don't have a watch. There's a 1,000, 1,002 thing. So it's 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and 4 seconds. And when she got to 4 seconds, she left. She died. And they told me to roll her over immediately and do chest compressions. So I did. And I said, I have to close her eyes. She was gone. I actually felt her standing over off to my side. It sounds weird. And so I started to do the chest compressions. And they're telling me, or they're doing their counting. They're telling me I'm already started. So I did them for about 10 minutes. I was able to get a pulse back, but she had lethal arrhythmia. She had one of these drop dead heart attacks that a lot of athletes who got COVID or got the jab, mostly when you get the jab, this happens, but they drop. It affects the heart. I went in the hospital, and someone there said under the table, and I can't say who, that they saw a lot of people like this, a lot of athletes dropping. And kind of makes you mad. And had no idea this would happen. She didn't either.
36 years of marriage. I'm thinking about that. I'm 37 years old, so I'm almost like a physical representation of what, father of 2 kids.
Yeah.
36 years of marriage. That's a long time. So I'm sorry to hear about your loss.
Yeah. But, she supported me in what I did. You got to understand, I didn't know this about her. She didn't want me to tell anybody, by telling everybody now. I know she doesn't mind, but helps people. Before we got married, my wife was a survivor of a violent rape. Someone broke into her apartment, and then I read the police report, and she told me about the trial and stuff. And thankfully, the guy was put away for 10 years. But that affected her. So she would, every noise in the house, she'd have to go search the house, and so she could sleep at night. And then when I was starting to do ministry and starting to get called out and traveling, was around right after I wrote my book, and she would let me go, and I knew that she was having these times at night because I know she'd be worried and she wouldn't sleep. So I'd call her up as much as I could to talk to her. Well, she just supported. That's what I mean by support. She would let me go. And so when COVID hit that time in 2020 there, and everything shut down, and I wasn't traveling or ministering anywhere, so I spent 4 years with her. And that was a pretty good time. I was ready to, thinking that, we can stay together and grow old together. So I was going to, I was actually thinking of not doing ministry work anymore, and we're going to move away. We can just travel and, kind of just be with her. And
do you ever wonder what her first moments in heaven were like?
I imagine they were quite joyous. I know that she would see Jesus and all the pain is gone. I know that. And she's waiting up there for me, because this will need to tell you this part. But it was probably just when it was just before she got COVID. I think it was 2022. I had a dream, and I told her about it, and I did some spooking here and there in Denver and back at that time. It was just there and back, and so I had a dream, and so I was walking across a parking lot, and I was talking to a guy. He was interested in Christ, but he's kind of feisty and stuff. And so we stopped. I stopped at the back of my car. This is even before we even bought this car, okay? And so anyway, and so I was standing behind the car, and he went on. He was talking, and all of a sudden, boom! I was taken up in the air. I just went. And the guy had big eyes. He's watching me go up, and it was a rapture. And all the other people went with me too, at different places. And it was a rapture dream. And I was like, wow. And next thing I knew, I was in since I've been there, I was in the reception area of the banquet hall where the wedding supper is. So the first thing I started to do was ask people, have you seen Sharon? Everybody was very nice. These were the most nicest people you ever met. And they would say yes, or just go down the hall. She's there appointed, very cordial, very polite. So I was looking for her, going around the hall looking for her. And I found her. And we held hands, and the door opened. We walked into the banquet hall together. So I told her that dream. She looked at me in typical woman fashion. And I'm a guy. I don't understand womanese after all these years, And she goes, "Where was I?" Well, you obviously, I know you're worried about missing the rapture. And I always tell her, you're not going to miss the rapture. I said, you obviously were raptured. She says, no, I'm not talking about. Where was I? Okay. Well, you were there in there, and I found you. You obviously were raptured. I'm not talking about being raptured. I'm talking about where was I? I go, she goes, no, where was I? Wasn't I with you when you're preaching? I go, sometimes you don't go with me because, well, it's up to you. And especially, I'm going someplace that's not too far away. You don't usually go. I just go down and come back home. And she goes, well, and says, but you did. So you obviously made the rapture? And she goes, oh yeah, I did, didn't I? Because she was worried about missing it or something. And so she smiled and stuff. And so after that, then her birthday's August 18th. She had the heart attack on the 20th, and she passed away on the 23rd at 4:32 a.m. So when her birthday came, we went to Saratoga, had a great time. So where hot springs are there and stuff. We were going to go hiking, but it was too cold to hike. That the wind was too strong. But we, it was great, and I had no idea anything this would happen. But just before all this happened, between the COVID till here, the Lord told me several times to prepare for your wife's passing. A still quiet voice, and of course I rebuke it and reprove, and thought it was the devil, and I didn't pay attention to it, and and since she went through what she did, she always did not want to go through any torture, any torment, because she couldn't handle it. And so I was questioning the Lord. I said, Lord, what's going on? I don't like this idea. I don't have my wife. What's going on? Trying to make sense of it. You told me to prepare for your fast, and I would forgive me. I didn't believe you, and I didn't really do it like I should. So, what in the world went on? What happened? What was going on? And so she didn't ever want to go through any torturous things because of that criminal activity that she went through. And so the Lord, Isaiah 57, 102, the righteous perish, but no one takes it to heart. Merciful men or women are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from evil. And they shall enter into peace, and they shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. So, don't know what all that means. I don't know what's coming down the pike. Trump wins the election. It looks like everything's going to be great, but I do sense great evil getting ready to counterattack. I don't know what's coming. But, but she did not want to go through anything. So I just take it, it's her time to go. I accept that. It's hard, and I'm tore up about it. I go through grief the last few days. I'm just very sorrowful, and it hits you. And you're here by yourself when you have her all around, and you always did things together. And
I bet. I'm sure it's, what's that saying? Somebody once told me that you never get over it, but your heart just grows bigger.
Yeah, it does. Yep. It hurts. It's painful. Sometimes days like yesterday was a bad day for me. Often it hits you at wrong times. You'd be out in public and you start crying. Oh my, I got to stuff like that.
But it's interesting. When I used to work for the hospital when I was in college, I went to Ohio State, and I passed trays in the hospital. And during that time, when you deliver a tray, and then in the breakfast, like during breakfast, deliver their breakfast, and then by lunch, the person would be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the person was talking to you normally. And then there were several times where people that didn't believe in God told me, that's like, one guy, I remember, he was a college professor. He said, Vladimir, I died on the operating table, and I went through this tunnel, and I was at this hill, and I saw this man in a white robe. And I asked him, I was like, who do you think that man was? He said, Jesus. This was an atheist. The guy, I think he was an atheist. I didn't think he believed in Jesus. But it's interesting. It was during that time when there are two things happened. First, I was like, wow, I can't believe people are not hearing about this. That's when I was inspired to start God's Voice Today, because I'm like, man, I got to tell people about all this supernatural stuff. This stuff is real. And second, the Bible verse talking about it's better to go to funerals. Because when I saw death, I was I was young, in my 20s. I saw death all around me, and it made me aware of how fragile life is.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow is not promised to anyone, and yesterday is gone. So tomorrow is just a vision. It is just a vision. Yesterday is already behind us. All you have is, you don't even have an hour for now. All you have is now.
Mm-hmm.
And living in that kind of state of mind, knowing that everything's so fragile, it was definitely helpful for a 20-something-year-old.
Yeah, when I was just started out in college and stuff, when I was trying to go to the criminal justice field, so I worked in a hospital too. And so my job was cleaning the morgue and cleaning body bags. I won't get into it, but I saw a lot of death and boy, the odor and all that, but nothing compared to what hell smells like. But nothing. It's not a pleasant thing, because I learned back then how one moment you're there, one moment you're gone, and it's amazing.
Well, for people listening, those that don't have or don't know Jesus, don't have a relationship with Jesus, what would you say to that person?
I say that, listen to the testimony that Jesus loves you, and he doesn't want you to go to the awful place I call hell. And he came, and, you know that you're not that good as you think you are. You made deals. You believe, maybe you're prideful, thinking that Jesus can't punish you because he's a God of love and all that. And you can continue the way you are, but you're empty inside. You need Jesus. He's here to heal the broken heart and to set the captives free, to give you good news to your crushed spirit, help you through each and every day, no matter what comes. And he wants you to, come unto, Jesus said, "Come unto me, all you are lowly and humble in heart, and take my yoke upon you and learn of me, or lean against me." In other words, and that's what Jesus wants. He wants us to realize that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We're all messed up, and we all stole things from people. We all have lied. We all betrayed. We all have abandoned. We all have stabbed people in the back. We all have beat people up with our words, gossip. We all put burdens on people that they can't bear. And they've done the same thing to you, and you carry it on and justify it to do what you're doing. We need to be released to that, forgiven, and that's what the gospel does. It releases you when you see yourself of what you're really like. And I think that's Habakkuk. So I think it's chapter 3. It says Habakkuk's prayer would be, in wrath remember mercy, in the midst of years, in your wrath remember mercy, O Lord. And well, he did. He sent Jesus, and you don't deserve to be saved, but he came to save you. It's like he's reaching your hand out to you, and you reach back to him and say, "Jesus, save me. Just save me, take me, I'm yours." I don't deserve this. I know what I'm really like, and help me become a better person. I can't do this on my own. I'm tired of the drugs, the alcohol, pornography, whatever it is. I need your help. Just cry out to him. That's what I would tell him.
It's interesting as you were sharing this right now, as I'm speaking here in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's 3:16 p.m. John 3:16. Good verse to look up, people. Interesting. No, I just kind of glanced at the time and I'm like, 3:16. Oh, that's powerful. And something else, I have this thing on my in my notebook to ask, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna let it go. And I keep saying I'm gonna let it go, but it keeps popping up. Both times when you went through your experience, you heard the music. What did it sound like?
Oh, it's a cacophony of beautiful singing voices in a language, in different language. I understood the words, but it was a different language. I couldn't understand it. And they're instruments that I play guitars, and so they're like stringed instruments I've never even heard of before. It's a beautiful blending. It's sort of a praise of God. It kind of roars and rolls. And they're singing about the Lord, his character, honoring and appreciating him, and singing about his character traits and his great mercy and things about him. That a lot of it, it would take too long to try to explain it. Some of it have been erased of my mind for good reasons. But the import was how good God was in explaining it. And there's things I saw in heaven that I didn't share with you. It's in the book, about the sovereignty of God, how all that works. And those type of things were being sung. And how good God was, and why he's just. What does his justice mean? What does all that mean? What does his love mean? All that's kind of being explained to you in the song.
And speaking of books, I will include, for everybody watching, in the description below, I will include all your books, all the links to your books. Definitely check them out. We're like 2 hours and like 40 something minutes.
Oh, wow.
But and Bryan didn't even share everything. So definitely get the books. A lot more details are there. And something else I want to mention for everybody watching. So in our community, we have a completely free community, over 3,000 members. And every week I will do a Q&A session, and I will definitely have Bryan for a Q&A session. And if you have any questions for Bryan, please leave a comment below. I will be looking at the comments, and we haven't scheduled a day yet. So check the description below maybe. But Bryan, wow, it's been over 2 hours. You've been so generous with your time. I appreciate you being so patient, sharing your heart. Powerful. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always like to do my testimonial tonight. But if someone gives me a time limit, like a half hour, I do it in a half hour. But it's like, but you said, take your time. So I took my time.
Yeah. No, I love it. I want all of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would take a lot longer if we went to, start talking about every detail. That's why we have a part 2 in the community. We'll have a live Q&A where you can ask your questions in person. So Bryan, thank you again. Appreciate it.
All right.
Love this. This was awesome.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on.
Hey, thank you for watching. If Bryan's story shook you, then you do not want to miss what's coming up next. The next video features Portia, who shares her chilling near-death experience from a life of trauma and deception to a supernatural encounter that changed everything. She stood at the gates of hell, heard the voices of demons, and then Jesus spoke. That episode should be coming up here on the screen right now. If you don't see it, check the description below for the link. Until next time, have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to serving you and getting to know you more inside of our free private community over at family.godsvoicetoday.com. Talk soon. Bye-bye.